Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, a new season of The Single Life. Let's watch.
I want to thank you for me having this opportunity.
Damien texted me. He said that you did really well. He said that you look really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm sorry I couldn't be there today.
I'm sorry too.
Are you upset that I wasn't there today? Or?
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot.
Okay, well, I don't know how this is going to go from here, but it's not starting well. Now, maybe he'll interpret this as a gesture that she's really into him, but it's certainly not a functional way to talk. And I didn't realize this is, I think, their second date, or at least very early. So this could be a pretty big red flag for him. It's just like, wait, so we're not in a relationship. You came to town. I was busy working. Here I am. And now you're angry at me as if I've done something wrong. Yeah.
I wrapped it up as soon as I could. Took a little bit longer than I thought, though.
I came here, I made my first step towards you, and I fly to you.
Yeah. I mean, it's just textbook preoccupied attachment. The hurt is there, so we see the unfair anger, or at least what I would imagine a lot of people would deem as unfair anger and hostility and criticism, and not wise when you're trying to start a relationship, but really at any point in your relationship. So we see that on the surface, but underneath that, in all likelihood, I don't know, I'd have to ask her, total speculation, it is tremendous pain and worry and hurt feelings. So as a reminder, I've talked about this before, that when you have relational traumas in the past that aren't resolved or processed well enough in therapy, then it makes you very sensitive to future hurts, and they become exponentially exaggerated when, because it wouldn't be unusual for her to be a little hurt or at least a little concerned, or just like, oh, I was hoping he would make me number one priority, but it sounds like I'm not necessarily number one priority. Okay. I mean, most people, they would probably adjust, or they might not even really care. It's just like, well, I barely know the guy. It's a second date, and I hope to see him. I'm sure there's a logical explanation. We're having fun. Let's see how things go. But it wouldn't be unusual to have a little bit of pain there, a little bit of like, ooh, but maybe not even noticeable. But then it becomes exponentially exaggerated because of the relational traumas. It's analogous to if you had a bruise on your arm and someone just barely touches it and it hurts really bad. And then you yell at the person, but really it's the wound that was there that made, if you didn't have the wound and the person touched you there, it wouldn't have hurt at all, or would have hurt barely at all. And so instead of blaming the person, we want to tend to the wound, right? We can tell people, hey, I have a wound here. Please be careful around me. And then you could possibly blame people, but, within reason, right? You can't, for example, if we're going with the bruise, you can't get on a crowded train and yell at everyone. You can't announce like, by the way, I have a bruise on my arm. Everyone stand clear, and there's really nowhere to move. It's just like there's a certain reasonableness to the request, but that analogy was weird. So she's taking something that's very small, it's becoming very big. It's not conscious. She is doing this. It's completely out of her control. I think completely out of her awareness. And then when you're angry and hurt, you feel justified in lashing out. I guess it would be similar to, say they had been in a relationship for 6 months. They're totally in love with each other. And she's like, okay, I'm flying out tomorrow. And she flies into town. And not only does he not show up at the airport, but he just completely ditches her for a couple days. And then he texts her or calls her and says like, oh yeah, well, I was just kind of busy with work. And she's like, I thought you were dead. Like, why didn't you text me? What's going on here? And then he's like, I don't know. I just kind of got hung up at work and I forgot that you were coming. You could imagine that being very painful, right? And then you could imagine being justified in at least some version of what she's doing right here is just like, wait, so what? Some hostility would be justified to most people, right? Well, when you have exaggerated pain, your hostile response, your anger towards the other person, to you feels commensurate with the amount of pain. But from the outside, and probably from his perspective, he's like, but I didn't do anything to to justify this, right? And then, as I was saying earlier, what this will often do is it'll push him away. He won't want to date her again. And then you will be deprioritized or dumped or something. Or he'll defend himself and she will be more triggered, attack him, and then she will be the one to leave because, she's saying he's a jerk face, even though she was the one that created the situation. It's just a classic situation, actually, for a preoccupied person.
Like, it's hard for me because you live in another state and you travel constantly. Our situation is not normal, so I need to figure out certain things for me.
Okay.
Normally, I don't drink. I haven't drank alcohol for 9 years, I think. I'm sorry. I got so excited to meet him and I got very nervous. I didn't know how to deal with tension.
Okay, so she hasn't drank in 9 years. I knew she didn't drink. I knew she has a problem with drinking, right? But she's saying that she had a drink. It looks, I don't know what sort of drink it is, but it looks like there might be a fair amount of alcohol in there. And I think she's about to say that she overreacted because of the alcohol. And that absolutely could be true. Alcohol will impair a number of functions in our body and in our minds, one of which is to regulate our emotions, and another system in the brain that's very important is to evaluate situations and make plans and be purposeful around our behavior. When we are sober, we have a much better ability to say, well, I'm on a second date. I feel hurt and I feel angry, but is that really fair right now? Is that really something I want to do right now? But when you're intoxicated, you're much less likely to be able to think through that, and the emotion just comes flying out of people. So I wonder if that's what's going to happen right now.
I never planned that I would be involved with a guy who has your type of work. Never.
My type of work, how?
Because you work with models, with beautiful women, gorgeous women you work with. And for me, it's kind of, I don't know. For me, it's important to be a priority.
Sure, of course, but that's how I make a living.
Okay, well, what she's saying there, it's not terrible. She's expressing some concern, and it's not blaming him or anything. I think it's fishing, or she's just stating how she's feeling, but I think she's fishing, and he is answering the question. He's like, sure, but it's how we make a living. Now, if he really wanted, and who knows what he wants, to alleviate or avoid the landmine, because even just what he did right there could be stepping on a landmine. Now, to us, it's like, that's a rational thing to say, especially when you're in the very beginning of a relationship, because it doesn't seem rational to pressure him to say like, no, I would absolutely make you a priority. It's just like, we barely know each other. Like, what are we talking about here? And also, what's the implication that somehow, like, if I was to be in a relationship with you, that you would think I was cheating on you with my coworkers? Like, I work with these people. But anyway, so what he said there was, well, sure, absolutely make you a priority, but it is how I make a living. To us, that's a reasonable response. To her, it could be triggering because she's already probably in a triggered state. She's drinking alcohol. Her ability to regulate her emotions is already not great, and it's probably getting worse as she's getting intoxicated. And then when he says a defense, but it's a reasonable defense, but it's how I make a living. To her, so what's an analogy, or how could we see this? When you're talking to a child, and this is really a fair analogy for people that are in this state, that when you talk to a 5-year-old, for example, and the 5-year-old wants something from the store, they're just like, I want that thing, buy me that thing. And you as a parent are like, well, I could buy it, but I can't buy that. It's just not in our budget. I mean, I guess I could take money away from our rent or food or car payment or something, but so I could buy it, but no, I just can't. So you say to the child, I'm sorry, we just can't afford that. We can't buy that thing. And for the child, given their mood or whatever, they could completely compensate. Just like, no, and they're crying, and they're seeing it all from their perspective. They're not thinking in terms of budget they just feel like they're being mistreated unfairly. Maybe in their head they're just like, you bought my sister something, last time we were here and you never buy anything for me. We understand that 5-year-olds are like that. They're irrational. They're very self-centered. We don't want them to be thinking about the parents' budget. It's actually potentially abusive to involve children in that kind of adult worry. So it's a natural product of their narcissism and their naivete. Well, when you have these kinds of relational traumas, you will regress, and you often are kind of stuck in that developmental phase where you're so preoccupied with your own emotions that you don't have a lot of time to truly have empathy for other people. Now, preoccupied people tend to be very good at detecting emotions, which is a form or a part of empathy, right? But when you're in a constant, particularly I think for Natalie, if she is preoccupied, which I don't know, I think she has a pretty high degree of it. And when you have a pretty high degree, that's commensurate of a lot of relational traumas early in life without any resolution or therapy in life. And when you are feeling all of that pain and anxiety, it's just about you. And when you're even relaxed and you're not being triggered, you're still often in a state of distress and a state of neediness. And again, you're pretty good at reading other people's minds, or you think you are because you needed to do that when you were a kid, but you don't necessarily really care in the way. So if we rewind the clock back to you're 5 years old and you're being intermittently attuned to, maybe abused, maybe abandoned, but you are desiring attunement from your caregiver's safety, attention. And it sometimes happens and sometimes doesn't. Maybe there's abuse in there. And so you orient yourself to really try to gauge what is going on in your caregiver's, your attachment figure's minds and emotions, because you learn that if you are super aware of what's going on with them, then you can kind of game the system a little bit. You can maybe even monitor or even affect their moods. Like, if you're really smiley, maybe they'll be nicer to you and you can get like a little bit more attunement. You never get fully what you're deserving, but that's how it works. The preoccupation is a strategy to give you a little bit more attunement when you're young. So you are paying attention to your caregivers, but you don't actually care from an altruistic standpoint what the caregivers are going through. It's mainly a strategy, a selfish strategy, which is understandable when you're a child, right? But if you never recover from that and have corrective experiences around that, then you retain that mode into adulthood. Now, I'm not saying that people with preoccupied attachment have no empathy. They do. Everyone can possess empathy. But when you're stressed out, you are impaired. Your empathy is impaired. Another analogy that I will give sometimes is you're helping your daughter learn how to ride a bicycle. I mean, you have a good relationship with your daughter. You're holding onto the bike and she's like, "Oh, I'm doing good." And then she's like, "Let go. I can do it on my own." And you're like, "Are you sure?" She's like, "Yeah, let go." So you let go and she's going down the road and she's doing great and you're like, "Yay," and you're filming or whatever. And then all of a sudden, boom, crashes and you run up to her and she's got, some blood on her knee or something. You're like, "Oh, are you okay?" And she looks up at you and she says, "I hate you. Why did you let go of the bicycle?" Okay. So in that moment, if you were thinking rationally, you would argue with your kids. You're like, "Well, but you told me to let go and you're the one that fell," whatever you would. But we understand as parents that the child is going through, they're having a moment and they're scared, they're hurt, it's demoralizing. It's normal to have an explosive reaction. That's not fair, to blame other people, to just have hostility just come, flying out of you without any sort of rationale to it. Well, for people that have preoccupied attachment to a high degree, that's what's happening for them. They're so hurt, they just don't know what to do with things, and they're so distorted. And, if you ask the kid that fell down on the bike, in that state, you'd be like, "So is it fair that you're yelling at me right now?" If you just really got them to answer honestly, they would say yes, because it feels fair, because they're hurt, and you're supposed to protect them, So when he says, "It's my job," it's akin to a parent saying, "We can't afford it," right? And for the parent saying we can't afford it, that's the rational response. A lot of people would agree with that. But the 5-year-old is in such a state, they can't really empathize. They're just they're just like, "But I want it." So for the preoccupied individual, that's very hurt and also to some extent developmentally stunted a little bit based on their attachment injuries. When he says, "But it's my job," if she were not preoccupied, she would go, "Oh, it's kind of a bummer because I would want to be, his entire life because I want him all to myself. But I understand that he also has other aspects, so I can balance that out." But if you're so hurt and you're so used to seeing things in black and white, then when he says that, it is interpreted by the nervous system as a threat and an indication that he doesn't really love me, that he's actually dangerous. And then you get hurt and scared, and then you have that anger that's exaggerated, and then you get hostile. So I don't know. Let's just see. Maybe she's capable of reining it in. So let's see what happens.
Like, honestly, are you involved with someone?
What do you mean, romantically?
Yes.
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
1,000,000%.
1,000,000%? Yes.
Okay, it's not great to interrogate someone and to basically accuse them of lying. Do they have an exclusive relationship? That would be unusual. I don't think that they do. So, all right, but he says he's not. She looks suspicious, because I think she feels threat, which isn't actually happening. She feels hurt, which isn't actually him, it's her past. She knows enough not to attack, but or maybe this is her way of seeking reassurance, of just like, well, maybe if I ask this question, it'll reassure me and then I can calm down. Let's see what happens.
If you're not committed, I don't want you. I don't need you.
I mean,
Yeah, it's just classic. And then you see his demeanor. He's like, he's laughing. He's like, wait, what? How did we get here? Let's rewind this whole thing.
Like, honestly, are you involved with someone?
What do you mean, romantically?
Yes.
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
1,000,000%.
1,000,000%? Yes.
If you're not committed, I don't want you. I don't need you.
I mean,
Yeah, it's really classic. This is a very common thing, actually. Well, she seems pretty severe, but I'm guessing a lot of you have been like this or have experienced someone like this. It's a very common thing where you're like, wait, how did we get here? But what's happening? All I did was have a work thing that was impossible to get away from, and now we're here, and we had a great first date, so what's happening right now? And now I'm being accused. Now you're saying you're breaking up with me because what is happening?
no, I think it's too early, on our second date to talk about being like exclusive.
What's the point of relationship if I'm not exclusive? I don't need a guy then.
So there's nothing wrong with her saying, look, if I start dating someone, it has to be exclusive right away. It doesn't have to be for the rest of time, but I don't want to be dating casually. I don't want to be dating someone who's dating other people for a variety of reasons. And that's not what I'm going to do, and I don't want other people to do that too. Just tell people up front. You're not going to find a lot of people that are going to want to do that, but you will find some. In fact, some people might be really happy to find someone like that. So it's okay. You can want that. I could see some people, given their issues or their style of things or their worry about STDs or their culture or religion or something. Yeah, okay. But why would you go on a date with someone in a culture where at least I would assume she knows that's not normal to commit to someone after the first date? So it's okay that she wants it, but I don't even think this is really how she thinks. I think what's really happening is that she has that hurt, she has that fear, it's exaggerated, and she's just latching on. And she would do this with Mike. She would latch on to something, like his drinking or some other thing that he did, and it would just be a manifestation of the unbridled pain and fear that she was feeling, right? So I think she's just latching on to that.
I think we just need to get to know each other a little bit longer. Don't you?
This is bull. I fly to LA to see him, and what I get is that I'm not enough to be exclusive with me.
Yeah, I don't know about her, but I wouldn't be surprised if she has been relationally traumatized, and as a part of that, she has preoccupied attachment style in a pretty severe way. And it could even be getting a little bit more towards disorganized attachment, actually, because of the things that we've seen and heard. There's some overlap for some people. Anyway, so not only that, but also as an element of that is extreme low self-esteem. Because when you're being treated poorly by your caregivers, you conclude that it must be you. And so you have to be different. You have to be more noticeable. And other people are the source of your stability and your safety and validating you. You can't turn to the self because you're not given enough time to develop a self-soothing self-esteem. And so you rely on other people to define you and to soothe you, and you have no ability to just say, oh, okay, well, those people are having some issues. I'm okay. I'll be over here. It hurts, but I'll be all right. To the preoccupied individual, particularly at high end, they can't do that because of the reason I say. And so when they are being rejected, there's a whole slew of feelings and traumas that are being triggered, including often this notion that I'm inherently unlovable. No one will ever love me. I love too much. Other people don't truly love. These schemas just coming because it's based on when they were children. And of course, when you engineer your life in such a way that it looks like this, then it actually becomes this because you love so much. No one ever loves you. No one ever sticks around.
I have my life. You have yours, okay? It's different.
It's definitely different.
1,000,000% different. But I like you and I'm happy to see you. But if man doesn't choose me, believe me, I will never choose this man.
I understand
Even
that.
if I like him a
understand
lot.
that. But I feel like that's what we're doing here. We're seeing if that is even a thing, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And just think about it for a second. And this is not unusual to have a second date where you're already essentially fighting with each other, created by her. If you're him, you're being accused of lying and cheating, and you're doing something wrong. You've harmed her in some way, and not just by having a job, but also just your approach, because you're like, I'm not ready to commit because we're halfway through our second date. I don't know you well enough. The vibe, if you're him. Now, for us, we're on the outside, so we don't necessarily absorb what she's putting out. But if you're in his shoes, you can really feel the fear because you're being attacked and you're being accused of things, and you're not ready for that. You're just like, wait, what's happening? Am I responsible for this? Even if you're securely attached, it can be really distressing to the individual. So just imagine that for no reason. For completely no legitimate, rational reason. But, I mean, there is logic behind it because of what she went through, I think, speculation. But just imagine being in his shoes. Have you ever been in his shoes?
Are you cold? You want to go inside? All right, come on.
And I will talk about one configuration that is problematic, in that if he were very paternal and a savior and say, no, I got you. It's all about you, and I'll take care of you. You can trust me. And I mean, that could be healthy, but if he felt it, but if he was really a savior, like, I will save you, that kind of vibe, whatever that sort of looks like behaviorally, then that could indicate that, one, he needs someone to need him because he is actually also insecurely attached. And one of the ways to establish less worry about being abandoned is to find someone that needs you. And what can happen is the person who needs to be needed by the preoccupied person, they often are avoiding all of their emotions and are projecting it into their needy partner, and will blame their preoccupied partner for having all these emotions, when in reality, they're the ones that have a lot of unmet and unexpressed emotions, and they will ridicule the preoccupied person for having emotions and for being needy, when in reality, they learned when they were young to ridicule themselves. This is often an avoidant attachment stuff. So if we saw that, I would be more concerned. I mean, we don't know him. God knows what he's really like. But the way he responded, it seemed to indicate that wasn't at least being indicated.
Space, and there's like no expectations. So I'm getting up.
8 o'clock, 9.
Okay.
This
you?
Yeah.
Okay. Good night.
I'm actually a little worried if they do get together physically, given what her issues are, that might be too fast for her, because the chance of this relationship working out isn't very high, particularly given the way things are already going, how triggered she can get and hostile she is with him. So if I were her friend, I would say, yeah, take it slow. Or I would ask her, I would say, so let's say you do get together, and things don't work out tomorrow, like, you just find you don't like him, or he decides he doesn't want to be with you. Because, it's not uncommon after a second date to be like, yeah, it's good, but I don't know if we're a good match. How would you feel about that, Natalie?
It's so traumatic. I mean, I didn't feel like.
What?
And it's a possibility, total speculation. There's no indication of this with her. But when preoccupied people are in the beginning stages of a relationship, they might move faster physically or even in the relationship in a variety of ways because they're desperate to get someone to like them. And also, they might not even really know what they want. I wouldn't be surprised if for her, she's in such a state of worry and pain and throughout her life, that she doesn't even really know who she is, what she wants, how she feels. And that also reminds me of when she was with Mike and things would, escalate in terms of conflict. And she would say things like, I'm not going to compromise my morals, this kind of thing. And it just makes me wonder if she feels, generally speaking, that no one cares about her needs. And so, but she doesn't really know what those are. Anyway, I don't know if that's what's happening here, but that would just be another consideration for people to think about, And obviously, long-term therapy is a wonderful opportunity to get in touch with your feelings and your needs, your boundaries, teach you through the corrective experience with a therapist that you matter, that you can trust someone, and you work through all those feelings. And then when you're in a situation like this, you don't go faster than you want to, because with all the distractions and the alcohol, you have a pretty good connection with, okay, do I want to do this? And maybe she does. Maybe she's like, yeah, let's go for it. And so I'm not saying she's supposed to slow down as some sort of slut-shaming message or anything. I don't know. Given how triggered she was on the second date, I would say that she's at risk for a lot of things.
See, it just doesn't go. I don't know. I'm sorry. Bye.
She decided to not. The only risk to doing it like this is that he will be like, hey, I wanted to go faster, which, he could assert, which, he could ask for. But that if he rejects her because of that, then I'm guessing she wouldn't want to be with him. So I think it's safer for her sake that they take it slower.
Why'd you slam the doors?
I slammed the door for Josh because he didn't answer my question if he committed or no. Can he be exclusive with me or no? And I felt like it's wrong.
So she says it's wrong. I don't know what she means by that. I think what she means is that it's morally or religious. One of the things that I've noticed about this show, and I've pointed out this before, is that they almost never go into religion or politics. Other shows, like Married at First Sight, they would go into the cast members' religions pretty heavily sometimes. And when the cast members were saying things, they would overtly reference religion and sin and this sort of stuff. But on this show, they almost never go into that. But we have to understand that most people, particularly her, frame their entire lives through religion and are guided by what the Pope says or what they think the Bible says, particularly when it comes to dating and having sex, right? So I'm guessing that's where it comes from. I don't know. That it's a sin to have relations with someone prior to a commitment at the very least. And so I think that's where she's coming from. Also, I think it's just safer for her.
He didn't answer my question if he committed or no. Can he be exclusive with me or no? And I felt like it's wrong. You want to have sex with me, but it's too early to be exclusive. Come on, man. What the bull?
Maybe this is a cultural thing because she's never really dated in the United States. Maybe in Ukraine it's different, I don't know. But she's like, it's bull stuff that you want to get together without a commitment. Because, she's been in the States for a long time, but she was with Mike the whole time. So it's fine if that's her value. I wish that someone would be there with her and just be like, look, it's totally fine if that's how you want to do things. Just tell people up front. You have to be up front. I think she's assuming that the men are also going to have her rules about things. And then when they don't, she's like, what's wrong with you? You know, you're wrong, and how come this is happening? And instead of someone telling her, look, on average, if you're just going to throw a net for available dudes in the United States, here's what you will likely get. Someone that it will be okay with having sex on the second date. Someone who is okay with having sex without an exclusive arrangement. Someone that might even wait months to have an exclusive relationship with someone. Someone that dates a lot of people. And maybe someone that has kids from a previous relationship. And if that's not what you want, then you really have to screen people out in the beginning. You're going to have to be upfront with people instead of running into and going like, what's wrong with this fella? All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.